Greetings, traveler. I'm SnapJelly, and there aren't that many things that people are actually more misinformed about than types of sword. And honestly, I blame video games for this largely because people tend to, like keyboard warriors, who never actually held one before in their life, tend to judge weapons on their shape, which is actually really, really dumb. That's something you just can't do. I'm gonna give you one example right here. This one. This sword is called a falchion, right? Now, as you look at this, you would go like, oh, okay, great. This is a single-edged, curved, saber-like weapon, right? No, absolutely not. Okay, first of all, where is the curve in this? Where is the curve? Right? This is this the curve? Right here. Because this is not a curved sword. Alright? This is a straight sword with a little nick at the end. The difference between this and a straight sword is that the point is not directly upwards. It's a little bit off to the side. But this is straight. This is as straight as it can get. This is not a curved sword. Whereas video game developers, for example, would look at this and go like, oh, this is a scimitar. And they would classify it as curved along with, for example, the saber or the samshir. Now, if you would use this the way you would use a saber or samshir, you would just stand in like your saber positions, you would die. You would seriously die because it's too bulky. It's a very lug weapon. You would swing it around like that. It won't work. You would get your fingers chopped off too because the lack of hand protection. It just doesn't work. So what is this then? Well, this is the same as this. Believe it or not. Yes, these two weapons are the same. Now, before you type your hate comment, let me explain, because I can predict what the comments are going to say. They're going to say like, oh, how can you say that they're the same? Because this one is single-edged and this one is double-edged. How can they be the same? Well, let me tell you. Alright, so the fact that this sword is single-edged, it makes handling it a bit different. But honestly, not that much. You see, these weapons, this one is a bit longer than the straight one. But the weight, the straight one is about 100 grams heavier. The weight balance on this one is about like 2 centimeters further away from the hilt. So they're not precisely the same. But it's not notable enough for it to actually be a difference. It's honestly like comparing a longsword to another longsword. One would be a bit wider, one would be a bit peckier and prickier. And they would simply specialize in different things. And these two are the same. Well, the only difference that the fact that this thing doesn't have a back edge is that you can perform a false cut. But on the other hand, the fact that it's single-edged makes edge alignment easier. Basically, this is still a thwacky weapon. That's another point, actually. People look at this and they go like, oh, that's a weapon specialized for the hack. Is it though? I mean, look at this. Is this not pointy? This is freaking pointy. Of course, I could stab you with something like this, right? Then you would die, but if I stab you with this, you would also die. No, this is not just a hacking weapon. This is a hacking and a stabbing weapon. Just like this one. These two weapons are the same. The weight and balance are about the same. They feel alike. They are just the same type of weapon. This one is single-edged and this one is double-edged, and that changes things a little bit. What it changes is that hacking with this one is a bit easier, and with this one you can do false cuts, like cuts with the back end. And that's about it. That's the difference. Whereas if you would compare this to a samshir or a saber, there is such a huge difference. You use these things the same way, whereas you would use a saber actually more like you would use a rapier, only a rapier would be like the poking version of the saber being the cutting version. Just because these two weapons look different doesn't mean that they are different. And talking about looks, another one, a very popular sword, also one that I really like, is the Messer. Officially, the messer isn't even actually a sword. Officially, it's a knife. But what is the messer? Well, essentially it's this, only this is sharpened. Some people say that it was also sharp with the falchion. I would argue that it wasn't. And the grip is messed up. Like, see, this is a sword grip where the tang goes through the grip right here and is stuck in the pommel. Messers didn't have that, so that it doesn't classify as a sword but as a knife, so that civilians could carry it. And also the messer has this iconic extra piece of metal here, called the nagel, or the nail in English, for extra protection of your hand. Does that make it a different sword? No. The messer is the same as the falchion. You use it the same, only a messer isn't even a single-edged sword, because it does have a back edge. Not a big one, but it is there. So, again, it's even more like this one. Even though it's shaped differently, it is really the same type of sword. Now, talking about sabers, for example, people tend to classify curved swords like sabers. But what is really a curved sword? People say that this is a curved sword. I would say that it's not. I usually look at simply the tip. If you can go from tip to like the middle of the guard in a straight line without touching the blade, it's curved. Essentially, this is what I say. You also have falchions and messers that kind of have the tip extend a bit, so technically it's curved. But honestly, to me, personal opinion, of course, but that's not curved. That's straight with a nick in the end. But like a saber's curved, right? No. Not every saber is curved. You can't look at a curved sword and be like, oh, that's a saber. No, what it is a curved sword. There are plenty of sabers that aren't curved. The curvature is not what defines a saber. And people go like, yeah, but like what pirates use, they're like sabers, right? No, they're cutlasses. But like the stereotypical cartoonish type of pirate, they use cutlasses, which again are used very similarly to sabers. But again, curvature doesn't define the way you use a weapon. The way sabers are used is because of their enclosed hilts. I don't have one myself, sadly, but they have more hand protection, so you use them in a different way. And you use this type of weapon in a very similar way. Only a saber is, of course, the cutty type, and this is the pricky type, the pecky type. You stab with this, obviously. Well, this one isn't sharp, but still. And then you have something like the backsword. The backsword looks a lot like a saber. I think it's also classified as a saber. But we're honestly not sure if the edge on a backsword was even sharpened. It has a huge triangular cross-section, but we're not sure if it was sharp or not. Making it a pricky sword, thus making it more like this. This is also not a rapier, in case you think that people think that these are rapiers. No, this is a foil. But jelly, I think it looks more like an épée or whatever the fuck. Right, you can call it an épée if that makes you happy, but essentially it doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say. Some swords tend to look alike, but are actually very different in usage. If you take a long sword and compare it to a great sword, you are gonna have bad luck. Because a long sword is a sword, and you use that like a sword. Just a long one, right? But a great sword is too long. It's called a sword because it looks like a sword, but in terms of usage, it's a lot more like a pole. See, just for example, like this is a long sword, a synthetic long sword, but great swords have usually, not always, like a ricasso here, which is like a blunt piece, and extra quillons right here, which is like these are quillons to protect your hand. Why? Because you would hold a greatsword like this. The handles would be huge, and you would hold it like this so you could stab with it. That's the way you use a greatsword, because otherwise if you swing down, you would hit the ground. You can't use a greatsword the way you would use a longsword. Greatswords are still swords though. They still classify as swords, yeah, but that's not the way you use them. Honestly, you can't say that a greatsword is really a sword. It looks like one, but in terms of usage, it's not really a sword. And similar to that, curvature and single-edged, double-edged things don't necessarily define what a sword is. These two weapons are the perfect example of weapons that look very different. Like, to people who don't know any better, you honestly can't blame them, because this, why would you say that this weapon is the same as this? This is like a knight sword, people would say, and this is like a pirate sword. but they're not. They're honestly not. You use them the same way. They are effective at the same points. And well, yeah, you could say that, for example, with this, you could maybe like put your hand here and do like that. And you can do that with a sword that's a double edge, but you could have sword. You can put your hand on it like this, but you could do that. Stab this way. So again, it just there are differences, but it's so little. They look very different, but they are the same. It's like comparing two weapons, the same weapons. Comparing a gladius from Rome to a gladius from Pompeii. They are different, but they're also the same. So the point of this video, don't judge a sword on looks. Because honestly, you can't. You don't know what a sword is used for by looking at it. It's just, you would need to handle it in order to know, essentially, what swords were used for. You can't say, oh, it's single-edged, so it's this, it's curved, so it's that. You need to actually hold it, use it, see how to use it, and then you can make a judgment of what type of sword it is. Don't just look at it and say, oh, it's that, because you will most likely be wrong. Alright? Great. So, bit of a rambly video today, but I still hope you enjoyed. If you've watched this far, then you might as well subscribe. And thank you for joining my quest. And it's freaking hot today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.